You know, when Botham Jean's brother hugged Amber Geiger, he left just about everyone watching stunned. And now that moment has earned him a prestigious award. Brandt Jean will receive an Ethical Courage Award for the empathy and forgiveness he showed Geiger. Moments after she was sentenced to 10 years for killing his brother Botham, Brandt told Geiger he forgives her and asked the judge if he could give her a hug. It touched people all over the world and sparked an entire conversation about when it's okay to forgive. Brandt Jean will be honored by the Institute for Law Enforcement Administration at a ceremony 1 week from today.